I just started reading Obama's book and I'm loving it, first of all. It's so good. But there's a part, I'm still at the beginning, and there's a part where he talks about this amazing comeback that he has in one of the debates during his elections. And it made me think about this past 2020 election, and Senator Elizabeth Warren had this incredible comeback to a somewhat sexist question or ageist question that a moderator had. And it was that if she were nominated, she would be the oldest president ever nominated. And she clapped back with, I would be the youngest woman ever nominated.
Thank you. Mic drop. Happy International Women's Day. No, I actually think that story so perfectly encapsulates why there's a need for an International Women's Day. I think women's voices and intersectional women's voices are so largely missing in like every facet of our community and every like societal institution. Um, and that's almost never not necessarily seen as a wrong thing. Like I think that's why like the patriarchy exists. But you know, if we don't have women's voices in something that's supposed to be as like unanimous and magnanimous as politics, and the idea that politics applies to everybody regardless of anything, um at such a like deep level, if we don't have women's voices at that level, like how do we even begin to address women's very specific needs and the ways that they're being failed by like society?
Yeah, 100%. I was but by the time that this episode comes out, it would have been past
Mhm.
International Women's Day, but we're
Yeah.
recording it on the Monday. And I was thinking about it today, and I know you and I were talking that like I don't remember a time in my childhood where I really celebrated International Women's Day, and I thought that this was
Yeah.
something that was recent. But when I looked it up, it was officially made a a celebration by the UN in 1975.
Which for what is it was quite a long time ago, but I mean, says a lot that like it says a lot that it wasn't celebrated as widely as it is now. Um and the need for it. But I think we also talked about how um I think it has to do with social media. Like actually when I first saw it, I thought that it was like something that was like deemed by like social media, like to be International Women's Day. Cause you know how they like kind of will make up not make up days, but like they'll just declare a day, the day of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I actually thought that it was done through that.
Yeah, no, I actually thought that it was the exact same thing. Like you see the random like I hate that I'm giving this example, but like literally National Hot Dog Day, like what the fuck?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was what it was. No, but this like dates way
National
this dates like back to the early 1900s, and apparently in the US it was designated in honor of like this garment workers strike in 1908 in New York City.
Oh,
And
wow.
then the United Nations officially made it a day in 1975, so there's like a lot of history behind it. I know that when I look back and I like reflect on this day, what sits with me the most are the female friendships that I have. I think that really sits heavy, not heavy, but like I definitely feel the weight of it and the gratitude that I have for it. Like I am so thankful for the women in my life. I grew up in in a mostly women-led family. Like there was the four of us, me, my two sisters, my mom, and then my dad. So, he grew up in a group of girls, and so I've always been surrounded by strong-minded women. And um yeah, I feel like every time this day comes around, I'm always reflecting on how much those relationships mean to me and pave my life. Thank you for coming to
Absolutely.
my
And I
TED
think
Talk.
no. No, but it's true. Like I think hearing you talk, like there's two things. One, the fact that this day came about, um, garment workers striking, like has anything changed? It's been at least 100 years, if not more since then.
Yeah.
And women are still at the forefront of lower paid jobs and have to deal with, I mean, like people always like love to just fall back on the wage gap, which obviously is very real and impacts women from different races um differently. But that in and of itself, the fact that we are talking about that even 100 years later, and the fact that women are still having to work frontline jobs, like we talk about
Yeah.
COVID a lot, we talk about who is facing the brunt of that, bearing the brunt of what COVID has done, and it's women because they are at the front line of, like you said, in your household, it's woman led, mine as well. It's like all of that falls on women. But
Yeah.
the other thing too is having so many women in your life, like I think you really realize the it goes hand in hand with what I was saying, but like truly just like the ways in which women shape lives. Like I think there, you can talk about like the gender roles that have been created for women versus for men. Um, but the idea of like supporting, uplifting, being nurturing, being empathetic, being emotionally intelligent, being aware, um, like that, the gravity of that is so much. Like I really think people who don't have friendships with women in their lives, and I mean that in terms of women in the most like transcending way, it like you feel it, you definitely feel it. Like I think not having, like even just me, like the amount of things that I talk to my female friendships about, but um I think it's so vast, like the need for this day and just the general um like what this day represents, like or what this day means.
Yeah. Tarini and I were laughing earlier because our podcast has just gone through so much growth and
Identity crises.
an identity crisis behind the scene. But when we initially thought of the idea, one of the concepts that we sort of like pitched to ourselves in terms of like what we would offer in what is already a very saturated market is the perspective of two non-Western women in the media space. And especially because we felt like, as two non-Western women, we didn't hear a lot of the similar perspective. And so when we were talking about this episode, that just came back to me in terms of like, how do we take space within today's culture in terms of like the workplace. um I think about like relationships, like you were just talking about emotional labor. That's always something that we love to talk about. Freaking love languages, like we're gonna drop another episode on love languages. Trini's like, no,
Literally.
I'm not doing this again.
I'm like, I can't. I wanted to scrap the first one. I can't do another one.
I'm just kidding. We'll never say never, but
Never
like
say never.
not for a while. Not for a while. um I just feel like this day is always, it has to do with like reflection. And I always think about like my identity and, like as a Middle Eastern woman who is Muslim, but like passes off as white, how can I show up for myself, but then for other people within my community? Like this isn't really a question, but more so like a thought. But do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it
Yeah.
really,
It's like a guiding principle. It's not like you wake up
exactly.
in the morning and you're like, hey Nadine, what are we gonna do today? Like, but it's more just like a guiding like light, for lack of a better way, that guides your decisions or guides where you might go.
Exactly. It guides what you might say and how
Yeah.
you say it. So I feel like that's something that like we were talking about the social media aspect of it, that I feel like uh this day could do a lot not more of, but like it comes very useful in terms of like exploring the different experiences that every woman um lives in and has, because like you said, it's all intersectional.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, and I think that, what's great about like having social media is that you are able to like disseminate information so quickly, and it's like it has such a wide reach, which is why I think having International Women's Day on social media is so great, because it really does kind of infiltrate all like the different barriers that
Mm.
might be there otherwise. But it also isn't lost on me the ways that, one, like social media allows these things to be capitalized on or marketed
Yes.
on, um and at the same and then the same way where people just start posting and it's like very tokenistic, like it's
Yeah.
just like a token post of like happy International Women's Day, but it's like, what are you doing that is like supporting women or helping women? And I think sometimes people get like really, I don't know what the word is, but like dissuaded, I guess, because they're like, well, what am I going to do in my life that's going to help women everywhere? And it becomes like
Yeah.
this big like looming thing where you're like, what am I going to do? But I think, supporting women, as I like previously mentioned, there is a space to do that in everything you do every single day. And being able to like first acknowledge that and then make change, whether that's in like the women you speak to, whether that's in the women that you interact with, whether that's in like social media space or out in your career, even the media that you consume or the things that you watch, the music you listen to, the TV you watch. You really have so much power. And like I feel like I preach about this all the time, where I'm like, as a consumer you have so much power, but like you really do. And so what a better time,
Mhm.
there's no better time to like enact that change or like make that change.
Yeah. I'm like laughing because you're like, what are you doing outside of social media? Like, how are you supporting other women? But I know something that like I'm guilty of, and I other people are guilty of, is like talking shit about other women. And so I
Okay, yes,
think
you
about
go,
like,
because I know we have different opinions on this, so you go.
and I was just thinking about how that's like I'm not supporting other women when I'm talking shit about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
But here
think,
I'm preaching the good
yeah,
word of God. I'm like, but we need to support our sisters. You know what I mean?
I do, but I think it's different because there's like two things. Absolutely. Tearing women down for the sake of tearing people down, or as a form of like projection because you feel insecure. I mean, Nadine and I love to talk about people feeling insecure. It's like our go-to. Um
It's our like go-to diagnosis too when someone's like acting.
to anything, we're like, that person's insecure. No, but it's true, like insecurity really makes you act in some wild ways. And
Yeah.
so, if you are putting other people down, specifically women, um because of your insecurity, that's one thing in and of itself, and definitely
Mhm.
something you need to address. If you're putting women down, or really anybody, but specifically women down because of the way that they're perceived, like, there's the trope of like an angry black woman,
Yeah.
when women are very assertive at work, or they're very they like really take ownership, um they are they're like written off as being bossy. If somebody's passionate, they're written off as being emotional. And so really understanding the ways in which where you're coming from is very likely influenced by internalized misogyny, whether you're a man or a woman who's doing that to another woman. But I think the part where it gets murky is, you don't like, just because you're a woman, it doesn't mean you have to support every woman no matter what they do.
Yeah.
And I think you can, so there's two things. Like, the first one is, you can absolutely call out when women are doing something wrong. That's why there is like the idea of what white feminism is, because white feminism is um started by white women and for
Mhm.
white women, and that's why that like breeds the need for an intersectional feminism, because the experiences that racialized women or trans women face is very different, and the intersection of if you're a racialized trans woman is even more different.
Yeah.
um and so I think it's totally okay to call people out when women are doing you it's okay to call out other women when they aren't when they're like doing something under the guise of feminism, or they're doing something under the guise of of whatever that might be. And just because you're a woman, you don't have to agree with something that every woman does. And that in itself is internalized misogyny, because
Yeah.
then you're taking on the trope of like always having to be like proper and nice and like never questioning. And then the other thing in terms of like just talking shit where you're like, oh, this person did something stupid, this woman did something stupid, I think when you're doing it in like a closed manner, it just doesn't have the same weight as one if you were to do it in like a public manner, and two if you were a man doing it. And that's
Yeah.
literally just because of the way that the powers that the structures of power and systems of power are set up in society, where you as a woman can say something and it just does not hold as much weight. And I'm not saying that to excuse it, but it just doesn't hold the same type of weight as if one, you have say class privilege and you're saying it at work, or two, you're a white woman saying it and you are saying it in like a very public place.
Yeah. I feel better now. Thank you.
Not that I'm like go talk shit about everybody, and like obviously if you're like I obviously know that you're not um being like a shitty friend and just talking shit about all of your friends, and you're like,
No,
well,
it's
if you're not
not
a
even
podcast, that's
I'm
not right.
gonna
And I know, no,
I'm gonna
it's not even
blast
to you.
it.
I know you would never. I know
No,
you would never.
it's so funny because, for first, like, it's definitely not. I'm like, my female friendships, like, they sit so close to me on International Women's Day, and then I'm talking about talking shit. Just to clarify, I'm not talking shit about my friends,
No.
but
And
I'm
you're
talking
allowed
shit
to
about
have
other
opinions
people.
and be like, oh, that's weird that this person did this
Yeah,
just
it's true.
because they're another woman.
But that's exactly it. Like, it's such a that like, that's not where things like, I don't know if murky is the word I wanna use, but yes, to your point, like, that's exactly what it is, where it's like, "But women, like, us chicas need to stick together, like, sisters for life," but, like, you don't owe you don't owe anyone anything, and, like, that shouldn't hold you back from calling people out for things that are, like, valid, you know what I mean? Like, just because
Yeah.
they're women. I
And
think that
that in and of it, yeah. Sorry, you go.
no, I think we were gonna say the same thing, which is, like, I think that is just that's, like when we talk about feminism and we talk about women equality or just equality for all, like that's part of that too in terms of like the playing field. We're all on an equal playing field.
Yeah, and I think too, like it's like kind of what I said before, but like women unfortunately don't need to be worried about what other women are saying about them. That's just another ploy that's like by the like I hate that I say this because it sounds so intense, but it's like it truly is just another ploy like by the patriarchy to be like, oh, but women talk about other women. Why can't men talk about other
Yeah.
women? But it's like or talk shit about women or whatever. And it's truly because of the power that they hold. Like we don't need to be concerned with what other women are saying about you. And and if you feel threatened by another woman, it again is likely due to internalized misogyny, where men
Mhm.
have created this system where you feel like, okay, if you're a woman in power, like there's not enough space to go, there's not enough power for it
Yes.
to go around, or there's not enough space for it to go around. But there is, just look at how many men there are around you.
Yes. Okay, I read this like staggering stat, which is that um I'm going to pull it up. I am going to pull it up. Um 32 out of the Fortune 500 CEOs are women. That's 6%. Like when we talk about like
Exactly.
women having a seat on the table, that's 6%. That's not even like 10%.
That's not even a spot. That's not even a spot at the table. But
That's
that's
like let me pull
exactly
up a chair from like the meeting room and you can just sit in the corner.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's such a shame because you're underserving you're underserving a huge population, first and foremost. And two, there are very clear statistics and there's very clear qualitative and quantitative analysis done that shows that when you empower women, because of the roles that women hold in society, you actually empower an entire community. I know you have like specific stats about economic growth that communities and countries face when their women are educated.
Yeah, so exactly. There was a stat that said that when countries invest in education for women and girls, they not only see economic growth, but economic growth at a faster rate. So there's this organization called the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, where 34 countries fall underneath that. And they identified that an increase in education for women and girls accounted for 50%, 50% of their economic growth over the last 50 years. And that's exactly what you're saying. Like when you empower women, you empower an entire community. And when you invest in people, that is like that is directly going to give you a positive output. Like here's my econ degree, right
Yeah.
for you. But like it's even like when we talk about um investing in can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can it's like I can hear myself.
Oh, I
That's
have no idea. I didn't
so
change
weird.
anything.
Okay, I think it's better now. That's so weird. Okay, it's better now. When we talk about not to get into this, but like the impact of capitalism, and if you were to take that money that's being thrown to the top of the ladder and you distribute it amongst everyone and you actually invest in people, you will see economic growth. And you will see economic growth again at a faster rate if you just invest in people versus corporations.
And invest in women specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
No, absolutely. And I think it largely has to do with the fact that women do take up the lower wage jobs in society. And that's another way to disenfranchise women, and sort of keep them unempowered. I mean, I feel like women should feel empowered at whatever level they are, but it's truly like a systemic way to keep women disenfranchised. And I don't like, I think what's interesting is, and I don't know this, but like the idea of how this started, like I don't know, and that's definitely not something that we have to go into now, but I just want to know, with everything that women do, whether that be unpaid labor in terms of household labor, what, like taking care of your family, providing, it's not known, it's not unknown that the responsibility of taking care of a house, of providing for their family in terms of food, of housekeeping, caretaking of the house, is a role that falls on women, and that in and of itself is unpaid labor. So that, in addition to everything that we do in terms of emotional labor for specifically the men in our lives across the board, whether it's men that are insecure, say it louder for the people in the back. No, but it's true. And then the work that we have to do in a career where we're getting paid less than men in similar or equal positions. I just want to know, like, where did this come from? Like, how did this start? And I don't even know if you can like trace it back, because I think it's so deeply entrenched and so deeply ingrained in our history and our society that it's so hard to like untangle that. But I really do wonder what it was that made people continue to disenfranchise women, and for what, because truly the empowerment of women and the betterment of women is something that positively impacts every single person that they come in contact with. And it's actually astounding, because men don't do that. Like, I was talking to somebody, and they were telling me about how they watched this comedy special. I don't remember who it was by, but he was basically I think it was, I actually don't know, so I'm not gonna like say someone's name and then have it be wrong. But it was a comedian, and he was like, can you imagine if men had to give birth like it would be like a whole, like, it would basically be like commentated on, like sports are commentated on, where they're like, and going in for the win, like, what, I don't fucking don't watch sports. I don't fucking know how they commentate sports, but like, but you know what I mean? Like, just the same level of like astounding, like, oh my God, how can you do this? And I was like, that's actually not funny. It's like, it's actually not funny, because the expectation on women really is to like give birth and get going. Like, that's what, like,
Yeah.
and if you think about why there is unpaid maternity leave, the fact that that's still a thing around the world, or the fact that you do take a pay decrease in Canada as well if you
Extend it.
go on maternity leave. Well, if you like, not all companies top up, so you automatically go on, like, quote, unemployment, and so you automatically take a pay cut, and then if you extend it, yeah, it's like a further reduction. And the fact that women menstruate, the fact that they have their period poverty is like such a real thing in all parts of the world. I think people like to think about it specifically in developing countries, but it's very much a thing in, quote, developed countries as well. And that, like, the fact that you get paid less, coupled with the increased cost of living because of the pink tax, it's like, it's so, it just like infiltrates every single system. And I think there's no better need, there's no like group of people, there's nothing that needs a day more than International Women's Day, because our level of output in regards to our level of the input we're getting is what's the return on investment there? Like 1,000,000%. I'm just throwing it out there. One of the things that I was thinking about as I'm talking about like the disenfranchisement of women, but like a very contemporary issue, which I don't know why. I don't know why I randomly thought about this, but talking about women having children, women bearing the brunt of like literally every societal inequality. I think the most outrageous and the most like futile one is of how you need to look.
Yes. Yes.
And I think it's so deeply ingrained in every woman, no matter like trans women, no matter, regardless of your race, like, and obviously it varies by race, because coupled with unrealistic beauty standards is the idea that they're unrealistic specifically, or even more so for racialized women, because they're largely centered around European beauty ideals.
Yep.
But just the idea that you have to be thin, you have to be your body, like the way that your body changes when you go through pregnancy, you have to continue to look a certain way, you have to continue to maintain a certain body type or body standard. And I think I read a statistic that was something like children, it's like 70% of children before the age of 9 have gone through at least 2 different types of diets.
Oh
So
my God.
whether it's like whatever that might look like, but specifically for specifically for losing weight. So not just because I'm allergic to peanuts, so I need to stop eating peanuts, like specifically with the result of losing weight. And so it's terrifying, because we talk about social media so much, but like it's bombarded us with images of what, quote, women are supposed to look like. It's very hard to like take that away, but even in that, like, the society has found a way to disenfranchise women. So when you look on social media and you look at, quote, Instagram models, I have not met one person who has not at some point in their timeline of being on social media made fun of women for posting pictures in a bikini or posting pictures online, but will continue to follow those women and think that there's a difference in following a, quote, Instagram model or whoever who posts more like risque or more revealing pictures versus getting an OnlyFans. Like, I think the I think that there's like such a rise of OnlyFans. I don't know if you've seen this on like over the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Call Her Daddy podcast, which was like, if you get an OnlyFans, you're a slut. And I was like, shut the fuck up. I literally was like, what the fuck are you talking about? First of all, what the hell is your podcast about? Like, and I think that that is a perfect example of women bringing down women. But like
Yeah.
the disenfranchisement of women like continues at such a deep level because you think you want to consume that content, you just want to be able to do it for free. So the moment that women start making money off of it, oh, all of a sudden it's wrong. But you continue to follow those people on social media. You continue to engage with that type of content through porn.
Yeah.
But the minute that you have to like empower somebody by paying for it, oh, all of a sudden OnlyFans is so bad. And why the fuck would you get an OnlyFans?
I think the debate around OnlyFans is so interesting because like I tie it closely to the debate that you and I had about women who post sexualized photos on Instagram and
Mhm.
use it as a way to like claim their sexuality or take back their sexuality. But like you and I are like I can't remember what our exact debate on it was, but it was like, is it really for yourself? Like,
Mhm.
what is the intent of the photo? Do you know what I mean? Do you know
Yeah,
what?
I
Like,
do. And I totally do. And I think after I had that conversation was after we had that conversation
yeah,
was when I went back and was like, was thinking about this, that even if you post it for other people, like, this is what I'm trying to say. Society and media will sexualize women regardless at
yeah,
any age, no matter what. So whether you post it for yourself, whether you post it for somebody else is totally up for debate.
yeah,
And you can like that's like a controversy in itself. Like I remember Billie Eilish was like, the reason that I dress like this is because I want people to focus on my music and not be sexualized. But
yeah,
why should somebody have to decide, like, if you are as talented as Billie Eilish is, like like no man ever thinks like, oh, how am I going to dress so that people focus on my music
yeah.
versus how I look? But then if you are going to be sexualized either way, then why not make money off of it? Make it beneficial for yourself,
A
you
hundred
know?
percent, 100%.
But I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But I think what I was actually thinking about with OnlyFans is that I know that there's now a rise in Instagram influencers or even like celebrities who are going on OnlyFans and are actually oversaturating the market for people who are on there and are actual sex workers who use it as a way to earn their income. So I think of like what happened with Bella Thorne, for example. Did you
Mhm.
hear about this? How she went on and she was like, she was charging like an arm and a leg for her posts. And it wouldn't end up being anything, but the controversy was that like because she has a high name ID, she was taking everyone from these other uh, sex workers
Outlets.
profiles, and they were all going to her. And so I feel like the conversation on OnlyFans, like we can even like have our own episode on it. But
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting when it comes to like when we speak about how we make space for women and how women share those spaces, and OnlyFans is like the perfect example.
No, I think that's such a good point. Like, absolutely. Like, I think that's such a good point. And also goes to show like like why intersectionality is as important as it is when we talk about International Women's Day or really anything that has to do with women, because Bella Thorne has class status, she has privilege, she's white, like she, is famous. So like that is privilege in and of itself. And we know that a lot of the time people who are famous like didn't just get that. I mean, more often than not, didn't just get that way because it just so happened. Like their parents are very wealthy. They know somebody in the industry. So yeah, exactly. As a white woman, that's exactly the point. Like, and you said it, like the way that women create space for more marginalized voices. And absolutely, like sex work is real work. And so we should be creating space for that in society.
Yeah. I feel like we would be remiss without bringing this up, but we can't talk about International Women's Day without mentioning the Oprah interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. I
Absolutely.
was freaking tuned in. I was tuned in, like to the max. And it was it was it was very heartbreaking, not surprising, but just heartbreaking to hear about her story and the lack of support that she got from the institution, as she called it. And I think what's especially, important to talk about, especially on International Women's Day, is the way that the British tabloids uh, would talk about Meghan Markle versus her sister-in-law, who was Duchess Catherine.
Kate.
Or
Oh,
exactly,
okay.
Kate Middleton. I don't know why I gave her like, I don't know why I went by her like super
I
formal
know.
serious name. Like I like bow down to the British royalty. I just watched The Crown. I'm a big fan.
I'm
But
dead.
do you know what I mean? Like there was a part in
Yeah.
the interview where Oprah was comparing, um, I laugh because it's like it's so ridiculous, but she was comparing headlines on Kate versus Meghan, and one of them was on like literally an avocado. And one of them for Kate, it was like, oh, Kate has an avocado, blah blah blah, whatever. But for Meghan, they tied her
Kate has
making.
an avocado? What do you mean?
I'm gonna pull up this exact headline.
It was literally Kate has an avocado, like she's about to make some guacamole.
Yeah, I'm not joking.
What?
No, people are wild.
Tabloids are wild. Like literally, I'm like, how are you still in business? But okay.
Well, the reason they're still in business is because they
Yeah.
work with the royal family.
Wrong. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, this is what it is. Um, so Kate and William. Prince William was given one of the green fruit wrapped in a bow by a little boy whose mother is suffering during her pregnancy too. He said he'd take it to Kate and see what happens and said, "Good luck for the boys, mummy." This was on about an avocado. Meghan Markle. The pregnant Duchess of Sussex and so-called avocado on toast whisperer is wolfing down a fruit linked to water shortages, illegal deforestation,
Oh
and
God.
all-round general environmental devastation. They fully tied this
I'm
avocado toast
dead.
to like the end of the world.
They were like, this caused coronavirus.
She fully was like, that is a loaded piece of toast. Like I'm just trying to
but
live.
but literally the reason why they are that way towards her is because she's black. Because
100%.
she's a racialized woman.
And
Absolutely.
she that's a big part of the interview. It's on like, the difference in treatment that she received because she was a black woman. And just like she was this outsider that came into the royal family, but it wasn't even given the respect that you would think her name would give her, like having a title in her
Yeah.
name. So it was very glaring and yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
but and exactly. And I think it like brings up, first of all, that whole interview was, I mean, I didn't watch it, but I like read the highlights after and it was wild
Yeah.
because it truly goes to show the way that every societal institution comes together to
Yeah.
vilify a black woman, a racialized woman. And if it's happening at that level where you're right, having that type of a title can't even protect you from it. Like, imagine the outward racism that women feel, racialized women in specific, Black women in specific, that they face and deal with on an everyday level. But it also, it's like a larger theme of the ways in which everything that happens affect women or have an impact on women in like a more severe way. So like whether it's eating a freaking avocado toast or the way that they cover how the things that Meghan Markle did, the fact that she was an actress, there like everybody now was like, she's acting, she's acting. Like what a poor performance. When they like when she went on the Oprah show. Um, but also like it's just so scary. But like this whole narrative is also goes to show how people don't realize. Like I read a comment about that was underneath an article, and it was like, the same people who believe Meghan Markle are the same people who elected Trump, and the clown emoji. And I was like, you really don't realize that it's the same systems in power that disenfranchise and vilify Meghan Markle that elected Trump. It's not
Yeah.
an inverse relationship. It's actually the same relation. It's a positive relationship between the two,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, because it's certainly not positive. Um, but yeah, and you think of how their life has been impacted, but then you think about women everywhere whose lives are women's lives that are impacted more by things like climate change or coronavirus or um,
Yeah.
any societal issue impacts women more than it impacts males. Um, and people just continue not to do anything about it, and continue to, the fact that Trump was even elected for, I mean, I know both of us, but especially you, can go on forever about this, but just the fact that he was even elected, like, you might as well just wear a shirt that says "I hate women."
But I think that was like the shocking part too. Like when we think about Trump and we think about this like society, really like this lead in society that's making all these decisions that lead to someone like Trump being elected. Um, they too are compromised of women. And like when we talk about uh like we were saying how like even women have internalized misogyny, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
There's this if you watch The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, he has this guy that he used to like send out to the Trump rallies and would ask the Trump supporters like very basic questions on
Mhm.
like Trump's policies or some of the things that he was saying. And one of the rallies, he asked about this, like he asked about the time where Trump said that he likes to grab women by the pussy.
Mhm.
First of all, I cannot
Yeah,
like
I know.
don't even get me started. I don't even know what the hell to say about that. But
Yeah.
people were people were I'm like falling short for words, but they were not only in support of it, but they were echoing what he was
Yeah.
saying. And they were echoing that rhetoric. And women were echoing it as
Yeah.
well. Like I remember one woman being like, I would let him. And so it
I It's
Irini's
like
guy.
frightening. It's like
So
actually frightening.
it's a very concerning place to be honest. Like it's concerning because to your point, it's not like these people popped out of nowhere and they're like, oh, we're here, what's
Yeah.
good. It's been brewing. And the
Absolutely.
same people uh like to your point, there's just a positive relationship with like what we're seeing with this interview now with Meghan Markle and like what we're hearing about the discrimination that she faced as a black woman in the royal house. So like it's just all tied together, and it's very it doesn't sit well.
No. And yeah, you're exactly right. And like, absolutely, we talk about, say, the Trump presidency, like, absolutely that it impacted men. I mean, I'm sure there were many men who were against Trump, but his presidency, as much as I'd like to forget that time in history, um, his presidency more adversely impacted and affected women than it did men. And that's just an example of how current events and current things that happen in the world, whether it has to do with climate change, whether it has to do with education, whether it has to do with healthcare, whether it has to do with policy around all of those things, most impact women. And kind of is like a full circle moment, because if you don't have women at the table having these conversations, and women who are already in those positions making space for other racialized or women with intersectional identities, making space for them to bring their voice, their perspective, their lived experience to the table, to shape policy, to shape further change, like how can you possibly ever have that change? Like you won't.
You were asking about where like the marginalization of women began, and I honestly think it dates back to like religion and when religion was created. And it's hard to say because I'm trying to build, you know, a better foundation and a better relationship with my religion. But I remember having this conversation with my mom that when I was reading, you know, the Quran,
Mm-hmm.
it was I felt like as a woman I was being excluded from the text that I was reading. And it was really hard for me to build that relationship with God and build that foundation if I, because I felt like I wasn't being seen as a person, you know? And I feel like that really set the precedence. And like you see that in across all religions, at least like I would think like
Absolutely.
the westernized religions, that
Absolutely.
women are not, they're secondary. And I think that that's just grown even more so over time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what makes it so hard with religious texts is that it's all up for interpretation, and it happens in Hinduism as well. I mean, I think it's a little different because in Hinduism there's gods and goddesses, and both do definitely play a part in the religion, I mean, as a whole. But absolutely, there are stories and there are instances where it's very, like very detrimental towards women, and what womanhood means of being of virginity and purity, um and yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what I was going to say, what makes it so hard is that the way in which religion is interpreted. And I mean, that's a whole conversation that we
Yeah.
can, like, all of these things are conversations that we can like blow up and have in its entirety, which really just goes to show the pervasive need for International Women's Day and the fact that it can be relevant in every single facet of society, whether it was 100 years ago, whether it's 500 years ago, or whether it's today and 100 years from now, which hopefully things have gotten better. But the thing specifically about religion is that it's all about interpretation. And so when you interpret text and you interpret these things, and sometimes in such a literal way, the actual message or meaning behind it kind of gets lost. But you're right, it's so hard as a woman reading these things. um you're like, what is that exactly saying? No, I think that's a really good point. I'm going to add it in.
Okay, cool. I remember we had that conversation too when we were recording the religion episode.
Yeah. No, it's true. Like there's this story in Hinduism where like one of the main gods, um, his wife gets kidnapped. And when he saves her, again, the idea that women have to be saved, but when he saves her, he's like, you, to prove that you're pure, as in she's a virgin, or has remained a virgin,
Do they burn her?
she has to, yeah, she has to jump into fire. And
I've heard of this.
if she comes back, um, if she comes back like alive, then it means that she's pure. But if she burns, then then that means that she wasn't pure. And then she does it. And that's like one version of the story where she does it. But that's like truly like I mean, we can talk, I mean, I'm like a little cautious about talking about specifically ways in which women are portrayed in Eastern society, because I think that it paints this narrative that it's worse for women in Eastern societies than it is in Western
Yeah.
societies, and that truly is not the case.
It's just different.
It's just different, and sometimes it's the same, like the idea of catcalling, rape, sexual abuse, sexual assault in the workplace, like those like transcend land boundaries, and land borders. So I like caution, I always use caution, but one of the things that women had to do in India and South Asia in specific is if their husband passed away, in Hinduism you're burned at the pyre, when you pass away, and they would be burned with them, because the idea was that your husband has passed, like
Right.
it like roots back to this story that I'm like not going to bother repeating, but yeah, like to show your purity and your devotion to your husband, it's that he has passed away, so now so do you. And so they would literally have to drug women so that they wouldn't know that they were being burned alive,
Wow.
literally. No, it's very scary, but then like there's an equal disenfranchisement of women in the Western world where, you know, where people, like, this is something that used to happen a lot when porn and Pornhub first started, but men who were bankers would recognize women who were prostitutes or sex workers and would deny them bank loans, but continue to watch their porn, but deny them bank loans because they were making money from porn. So like truly the disenfranchisement of women is like so widespread. It continues. It's regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, religion, anything, and certainly transcends borders of east versus west.
Yeah. Makes me think about Mia Khalifa. I was watching Rami and she made a guest appearance. Funny enough, or a cameo, sorry. Lindsay Lohan was supposed to make that cameo and she never showed up on set. And so they ended up contacting Mia Khalifa instead. And I'm so happy that they got her because she's iconic. Like she's like just
absolutely like beyond iconic. Like
she fights for like all possible rights.
Yeah.
She really
yeah. Talk about making space and holding people accountable.
100%. So she was saying how like she would get death threats.
Yeah.
And her basically like rape threats and just like all the different types of threats from Middle Eastern men.
Yeah.
But that they were the ones who clicked on her videos the most.
Exactly. No, exactly.
Yeah.
And even like
shocking to me.
Yeah. And that goes back to the conversation of like OnlyFans or what I just said about like bankers and women getting loans if they were sex workers. But it just like, it's so pervasive and entrenched even in the language that we use. Like even when we're swearing at somebody, we're insulting their mother. Son of a bitch, motherfucker. Like you're insulting the female in their life. You're not even fucking insulting them. And then that goes on, or bitch. Like it's just so deeply entrenched.
And it transcends across all languages. Like I know in Arabic it's the same thing. Like we say like fuck your mom.
Yeah, no, it's true. And then it also like talking about language is the way like, you know, one of the things that we wanted to talk about is we've talked a lot about influencer culture, but then the flip side of how people expect influencers, how they consume the content of influencers. But one of the things largely is how people communicate with women versus men online, and how if they don't agree with men, they're like, fuck this guy, he's an idiot. But with women, it's like, I'm gonna rape you. It's like, I hope you get raped and you die. Like that's like the threats are like specifically to their sexual like like whatever, their sexual experiences, whatever you want to call it. Or like this woman deserves to be raped, like the fact that Trump was like grab them by the pussy, like exactly, like it's like it truly is just so pervasive through every single thing, which is why then it also makes it easier though as consumers living in today's digital world to make a change and to put your money where your mouth is. You put up a post on Instagram for International Women's Day. Okay, consume media by women, support women in whatever it is that you do, your career, your passion project, your hobby. Yeah.
Senator Warren, you would be the oldest president ever inaugurated. I'd like you to weigh in as well.
I'd also be the youngest woman ever inaugurated.